You need to wait outside with the other drivers." These were the 6 words that lit a fire. The man who said them, a smug lounge manager, had just insulted Zara Vance. What he didn't know was that Zara, the black woman in the high-end sweatsuit, wasn't a driver. She wasn't a passenger. She was the new owner of the entire building. What happened in the next 5 minutes was a corporate execution. But this isn't a simple revenge story, because in the real world, pulling a trigger like that has a blowback, and the karma that came for everyone involved was far more brutal than a simple firing. Stick around for the story of how a single decision changed 4 lives forever. The Gulfstream GO-50's wheels touched the tarmac at Teterboro with a gentle, expensive sigh. Inside, Zara Vance didn't look up. She was staring at a triangular data plot on her laptop, her brow furrowed. The numbers represented a port efficiency crisis in Singapore, and they were lying. Or rather, they were telling a truth she didn't like. She wore a deep charcoal, Loro Piana cashmere hoodie and matching joggers. It was a $4,000 outfit that, to the untrained eye, looked like simple sweats. Her hair was pulled back into a tight, intricate bun. No makeup, just the faint sheen of a $300 moisturizer and the intense, penetrating stare that had made venture capitalists write her 8-figure checks. Zara Vance was the founder and CEO of Vector Sync Logistics, a company that had, in 6 years, gone from a 3-person startup in a shared office to a global behemoth that used predictive AI to manage supply chains. She was 34. She was a billionaire on paper, and she was perpetually, profoundly tired. "We're on the ground at Teterboro, Ms. Vance." The pilot's voice, a smooth baritone named Paul, came over the cabin intercom. "Thank you, Paul. Ground transport?" she asked, not closing her laptop. "Black Escalade. Call sign Vector 1 is waiting by the hangar." "Good." She closed the laptop. The Singapore problem would have to wait. Today was about something else. Today was about an acquisition. A vanity acquisition, her CFO, Mark, had called it. VectorSync had just finalized the purchase of Astra Lux Holdings, a chain of high-end, private FBOs, fixed-base operators, across North America. It was the terminals, the lounges, the hangars, and the fueling services used by the Potas 1%. Mark had argued it was a drain on capital. "We move cargo, Zara, not celebrities." "We move data," she had corrected him. "And the people who own the world move through these lounges. The data on who is meeting who, which jets are flying where. That is the most valuable commodity on Earth. We're not buying lounges, Mark. We're buying a data node." But that was only half the truth. The other half was that Zara Vance, the girl who grew up in subsidized housing in Camden, New Jersey, remembered the first time she'd ever seen a private jet. She'd been on a public bus, its brakes hissing, stuck in traffic on the way to her cleaning job. She saw a sleek, white plane taking off, climbing like a missile into the sky. She hadn't felt envy. She'd felt a cold, hard sense of purpose. She wasn't just going to ride on one. She was going to own the system that serviced them. Today, she was setting foot in the Teterboro Astra Lux lounge, the chain's flagship, as its new sole proprietor. The ink on the deal had dried less than an hour ago while she was in the air. She stepped off the jet onto the rain-slicked tarmac. The air was cold and smelled of jet fuel and damp earth. The Escalade was waiting, its engine purring, but she waved it off. "I'm going to the main terminal, the lounge," she said to the driver. "Mom, I was instructed to take you directly to the city for the meeting at—" "The meeting is here," Zara said, pulling her hood up. "I'm walking. Take the bags." She wanted to see it as a customer would, unannounced. She walked the 100 yards across the tarmac apron, her expensive sneakers splashing in thin puddles. She pushed through the heavy glass doors of the terminal. The Astrolux Teterboro Lounge was a masterpiece of sterile wealth. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the private runways. The furniture was all low-profile, Italian, and uncomfortable-looking. The air was silent, save for the quiet clinking of porcelain and the murmur of subdued conversations. It was designed to make anyone who didn't belong feel it instantly. At the brushed steel reception desk stood a man in his late 50s. He was immaculate in a navy blazer with a gold Astrolux crest. His grey hair was perfect. His name tag read Arthur Pendleton. He was the general manager. Standing next to him, checking something on a tablet, was a woman in a sharp, tailored pantsuit. She looked to be in her early 30s, ambitious and brittle. Her name tag read Sarah Jenkins, Regional Director. Zara approached the desk, pulling her phone out to check the final wire transfer confirmation from Mark. She was focused on the screen as she stopped in front of them. Pendleton and Jenkins didn't look up. Not for a full 30 seconds. They were deep in their own conversation about catering minimums for the upcoming race week flight block. Zara waited. She observed. The lounge was, she noted, inefficiently laid out. The coffee bar was too far from the seating area, creating a poor flow of traffic. The reception desk was positioned as a fortress, not a welcome. Finally, Jenkins looked up, her eyes flicking over Zara's sweatsuit with a practiced, dismissive glance. Her smile was a thin, high-strung wire. "Can I help you?" she asked, in a tone that suggested she very much doubted it. "I'm here to meet with the management team," Zara said, her voice neutral, still looking at her phone. The confirmation chimed. The deal was done. Pendleton now looked up, his gaze even less forgiving than Jenkins. He took in her attire, her wet shoes, her bare face. He saw a driver, a delivery person, a lost assistant. "The management team is preparing for a transition meeting. A very important one," Pendleton said, his voice a buttery, condescending flow. "You can't just walk in here. This is a secure area." "I'm aware," Zara said, finally pocketing her phone and meeting his gaze. "I am the important meeting." Jenkins let out a tiny, sharp laugh, a tisk of air. "I'm sorry. I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're waiting for Ms. Zara Vance, the new owner from VectorSync, our corporate liaison." "I am Zara Vance," Zara stated. The silence that followed was heavy and absolute. Pendleton and Jenkins stared at her. They looked at each other, then back at Zara. This wasn't the reaction of people who had just met their new boss. This was the reaction of people who had just been told a cat could talk. Pendleton's face slowly settled into a mask of polite, icy disbelief. He leaned in, as if sharing a secret. "Listen," he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I don't know what you're trying to pull. That's a very bold claim. But our Ms. Vance is a CEO, a real executive. Not this." He waved a hand vaguely at her. "This is what a real executive looks like after a 6-hour flight and a $20 billion deal," Zara said, her own voice starting to chill. "That's quite enough," Jenkins snapped, her corporate climber instincts telling her to take charge. "Arthur, she's clearly confused, or she's a security risk. I'll handle it." Jenkins stepped around the desk, her heels clicking aggressively on the marble. She put herself directly in Zara's path, a full foot shorter, but projecting an aura of immense, unearned authority. "Ma'am, this lounge is for Astrolux Gold members and private charter clients only. The waiting area for car service and couriers is down the hall and to the left." "I am not a courier," Zara said, her jaw tightening. "Then you are trespassing," Jenkins said, "and I'm going to have to ask you to leave." I am not leaving, Zara said. I own this building. Arthur, Jenkins called over her shoulder, her voice shrill. Call security. Arthur Pendleton stepped forward. He gave Zara one last look, a look of profound disappointment, as if she had personally offended his sense of order. He didn't reach for the phone. He pointed. He pointed past Zara towards the heavy glass doors she had just entered. We don't want to make a scene, he said, his voice final. The driver's lounge is not outside, it's just down the hall. But frankly, at this point, you need to wait outside. He meant outside, in the rain, with the luggage carts. Zara didn't move. She just stared at the pointing finger. She stared at his smug, certain face, a face that had judged her, tried her, and convicted her in 30 seconds. All the exhaustion from the Singapore deal, the flight, the 6 years of fighting, it all coalesced into a single, diamond-hard point of clarity. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She held up a single finger to silence them. The audacity of the gesture made them both freeze. She pulled out her phone. The caller ID read, Mark C. CTFO. She answered it, her eyes never leaving Arthur Pendleton's. Mark, tell me it's done. Mark, tell me it's done, Zara said, her voice a low, steady thrum that cut through the sterile silence of the lounge. On the other end of the line, Mark Cunningham, her CFO, was oblivious. He was giddy. Done? Zara, the wire just cleared. The final transfer to Astrolux Holdings is complete. As of, let me check, 90 seconds ago, Vector Sync Logistics is the 100% sole proprietor. You own it all, free and clear. The press release is scheduled for 5 p.m. How's the G6R50? Smooth ride? Zara's gaze remained locked on Arthur Pendleton. His hand was still half raised, his pointing finger now looking less authoritative and more absurd. Sarah Jenkins stood beside him, arms crossed, tapping her foot, radiating impatience. A few passengers in the lounge, men in bespoke suits, and women with faces too smooth for their age, were now watching the little drama at the desk with mild, detached curiosity. The ride was fine, Mark, Zara said into the phone. I'm at the Teterboro Lounge right now. The management team is here. They're very welcoming. The sarcasm was so thick it was practically audible. Pendleton and Jenkins shifted. The mention of her being on the phone had given them pause, but they still saw her as a nuisance, not a threat. Oh, great. They were told you'd be arriving this week, but not today. Good, a surprise inspection. What do you think of the new asset? Mark chattered. I'm forming some strong opinions, Zara said. She looked directly at Jenkins. Mark, is Peter, our general counsel, with you? This gave Jenkins her first real jolt of uncertainty. Why would a driver know what a general counsel was? Yeah, he's right here, Mark said, his voice suddenly losing its cheer. We're in the conference room going over the post-acquisition filings. Zara, what's wrong? Your tone that's your burning a supplier tone. Put him on speaker, Mark. Both of you, Zara commanded. You got it. Peter, Zara's on. She's at the FBO. Zara, a new, deeper voice came on the line. Peter Hayes, her lawyer. Congratulations on closing. Everything all right? Peter, Zara said, her voice dropping another 10 degrees, becoming pure Arctic ice. As the new sole proprietor of Astrolux Holdings, I am executing my right to terminate, effective immediately, the employment contracts of the executive management team at the Teterboro location, specifically a Mr. Arthur Pendleton and a Ms. Sarah Jenkins. The silence on the phone was as profound as the silence in the lounge. What? Peter finally managed. Zara, you haven't even been on the ground for 10 minutes. You can't just... What's the cause? Cause, Zara said, letting a small, cruel smile touch her lips as she watched the blood drain from Pendleton's face. He was finally understanding. Jenkins was pale, her mouth a small O of horror. "Causes gross misconduct," Zara said. "Insubordination, and a spectacular failure to align with the core values of VectorSync, specifically the value of not being a small-minded, discriminatory fool." "Zara, that's not a legal cause," Peter protested. "You'll be on the hook for massive severance packages. These are executive contracts." "Check the acquisition terms, Peter," Zara said, her patience thinning. "The morals clause we embedded. Section 4A. Conduct that brings the parent company into disrepute. I am the parent company, and I am in disrepute. They just told me to wait outside because they thought I was a driver. That, Peter, is the definition of gross misconduct and, more importantly, a catastrophic business liability. They just insulted their most valuable asset." You mean they insulted you?" Peter clarified. "Are my interests not aligned with the company's?" Zara shot back. "They are, but void their severance, Peter. Void it all. I want their keycards deactivated. I want their corporate emails locked. I want them off my property in the next 5 minutes. Can you do it, or do I need a new general counsel?" It was a brutal, ugly question, but it was how she had built her empire. She didn't tolerate debate in a crisis. Peter sighed. It was the sound of a man who was paid 7 figures to handle exactly this kind of scorched earth command. Yes, Zara. I can start the paperwork. It will be a fight. They will sue." "Let them," Zara said. "I'll see you at the deposition. Send the termination notices. Now." "Doing it now, Zara," Mark's small, terrified voice chirped from the phone. "The emails are sent." The entire exchange had taken, from the moment she answered the phone, almost exactly 5 minutes. Zara Vance clicked her phone off and slipped it back into her pocket. She looked at the 2 statues in front of her. Jenkins was visibly shaking. Pendleton, to his credit, was trying to hold on to the last shred of his dignity, but his face was the color of old parchment. Miss Vance, there has been a truly terrible misunderstanding," Pendleton stammered, his buttery voice now curdled. "No, Arthur," Zara said, walking past him, toward the floor-to-ceiling window. She looked out at her planes on her tarmac. "The understanding was perfect. You looked at me, and you decided I was not a person who belonged in your world. You were not protecting a secure area. You were protecting your own fragile, outdated sense of order. My record, 30 years in aviation. And it all ends today," Zara cut him off. "Because you couldn't imagine a black woman in a sweatsuit could be your boss. You couldn't imagine me." "Please," Sarah Jenkins whispered. It was a pathetic sound. I have student loans. I was following his lead. I didn't mean..." Zara turned to her. Her gaze was even colder. "You were worse. He's an old fossil, stuck in his ways. You're young. You're a woman. You should have known better. But you saw a chance to handle me, to show your boss you were just as tough and exclusionary as he was. You didn't just let it happen. You participated. You told me I was trespassing. You threatened to call security. You failed the one leadership test you will ever be given." "What? What are we supposed to do?" Jenkins's voice cracked. "I don't care," Zara said. "Your corporate accounts are already locked. Your access to this building has been revoked. I suggest you leave before I'm forced to follow through on your threat and call security." Pendleton's face contorted, a mask of rage, humiliation, and disbelief, or this is monstrous. You can't just... You haven't even... I just did, Zara said. Get out. She turned her back on them, a universal signal of dismissal. She walked toward the back of the lounge, where a small service desk was tucked away. Behind it, a young woman, a junior concierge, was watching the entire scene with wide, terrified eyes. Her name tag, Zara noted, read Jessica. She was also a black woman, and she looked like she wanted to be anywhere else on Earth. Zara watched as Pendleton and Jenkins, moving like robots, collected their briefcases from behind the desk. They didn't look at anyone. They walked, stiff-backed, toward the glass doors. Every passenger in the lounge was now staring in dead silence. They pushed the doors open and walked out. Into the rain. The doors hissed shut, and the only sound was the faint ticking of a designer clock on the wall. Zara Vance turned to the terrified young concierge. "Jessica," Zara said, her voice now calm. "All business?" "Yes, Mum." "Ms. Vance?" Jessica squeaked. "Congratulations. You're the acting manager of the Teterboro Astrolux FBO. As of right now." Jessica's jaw dropped. "Me? But I've only been here 6 months. And in 6 months, you were the only person I saw who looked at me like a customer and not a problem. You're in charge. Your first task," Zara said, pointing back at the front desk, "is to call building security and inform them that Arthur Pendleton and Sarah Jenkins are no longer employees and are to be treated as such if they attempt to re-enter. Your second task is to get me a double espresso, and your third task is to find me the layout plans for this entire terminal. This place is designed all wrong." Jessica just stared, her mind trying to process the last 5 minutes. "Mum, they were horrible. What they said was awful. You did the right thing." "Did I?" Zara said, more to herself than to Jessica. She watched as the two figures, now small and pathetic, trudged toward the employee parking lot in the downpour. "I just fired an entire management team 5 minutes after acquiring a company. It wasn't the right thing, Jessica. It was the necessary thing. Now, about that espresso." Zara felt a flash of pure, unadulterated triumph. It was the justice she had been denied her entire life, delivered in a single, devastating blow. She didn't know it yet, but the first shockwave of the blowback was already starting. A passenger in the corner, a man named Robert Stanton, had not just watched the scene. He had filmed the entire, brutal, 10-minute exchange on his phone, and he was already uploading it to his cloud with a caption, "New Tech CEO's insane power trip." The 5 minutes that changed everything had begun with a buzz. Zara Vance's phone vibrating in the pocket of her joggers. It was a lifeline in a sea of hostility. When she answered, "Mark, tell me it's done," she wasn't just asking for a status update. She was arming herself. She was the CIO of a logistics company. She knew, better than anyone, the importance of timing, leverage, and information. Pendleton and Jenkins had none of that. She had all of it. While Mark Cunningham, her CFO, was celebrating on the other end, Zara was processing. Her mind, a finely tuned machine for risk assessment, was calculating a dozen variables at once. Variable 1, the insult. It was public, targeted, and based on race and class. It wasn't just rude. It was a fundamental misreading of the world she was building. Variable 2, the witnesses. The lounge was lightly populated, but the patrons were exactly the wrong kind, powerful, connected, and likely to gossip. They were watching. Her reaction would define her. Variable 3, the employees, Jenkins and Pendleton. One, a relic. The other, a sycophant. Neither was leadership material for VectorSync. They were a rot at the center of her new, expensive asset. Variable 4. The law. This was the tricky part. Firing them was easy. Firing them without cause was expensive. Firing them with cause was a declaration of war. "Mark," she had said, her voice sharpening, "I'm forming some strong opinions." This was Mark's cue. He knew this tone. It was the same tone she'd used when a supplier in Dusseldorf tried to short her on container space, a mistake that cost that supplier its biggest contract. "Mark, is Peter, our general counsel, with you?" This was the kill shot. This was the moment the decision was made. She wasn't just asking for legal advice. She was bringing the executioner to the phone. On the other end, in the sterile boardroom in Palo Alto, Mark Cunningham's face went pale. He motioned frantically at Peter Hayes, the 50-year-old general counsel, who was reviewing a stack of SEC filings. Mark jabbed the speakerphone button. "Peter, Zara's on. She's at the FBO." Peter, a man who had guided companies through hostile takeovers and IPOs, picked up the phone. "Zara, congratulations on closing. Everything all right?" "Peter," Zara said, her voice now devoid of all emotion. It was the voice of a pure, algorithmic decision. "As the new sole proprietor of Astralux Holdings, I am executing my right to terminate, effective immediately." As she spoke, she watched the faces of her targets. Jenkins was the first to crack. Her ambitious, brittle confidence shattered, revealing the terrified, debt-ridden millennial beneath. She was a girl boss archetype who had just run into a real boss. She started to visibly tremble, her hand going to her mouth. Pendleton was different. He was old guard. He processed the words. "Terminate. Effective immediately." And they computed, but he couldn't apply them to himself. It was cognitive dissonance. He looked around as if expecting another Arthur Pendleton to be standing there. He was a man who had never been fired. He was a man who did the firing. A Mr. Arthur Pendleton and a Ms. Sarah Jenkins. The names dropped like stones in the silent lounge. "What?" Peter's voice, tinny over the speaker, was a proxy for the world's sanity. "Zara, you haven't even been on the ground for 10 minutes. You can't just... What's the cause?" This was the legal hurdle. Zara had anticipated it. She had, in fact, personally written the morals clause with Peter during the due diligence. It was designed to clear out any bad apples they found post-acquisition. She had just never intended to use it on day one. "Cause is gross misconduct," she stated, "insubordination, and a spectacular failure to align with the core values of VectorSync. Specifically, the value of not being a small-minded, discriminatory fool." She watched Pendleton's face turn a mottled, dangerous red. He was past disbelief and entering the rage phase. "Zara, that's not a legal cause." Peter's protest was a lifeline for Pendleton. He looked at Zara as if to say, "See? You can't do this. Check the acquisition terms, Peter. Section 4A. Conduct that brings the parent company into disrepute." "I am the parent company, and I am in disrepute. They just told me to wait outside because they thought I was a driver." That, Peter, is the definition of gross misconduct. This was the moment. The wait outside quote. It was the shiv she'd been handed. It was specific, actionable, and humiliating. She saw Peter's counter-argument evaporate. A catastrophic business liability. They just insulted their most valuable asset. You mean they insulted you?" Peter's question was a technicality, but an important one. "Are my interests not aligned with the company's?" The snap in her voice was a warning. Peter heard it. "Void their severance, Peter. Void it all." This was the true fuck you money move. It wasn't just about firing them. It was about ruining them. It was about making this so painful that the lesson would be seared into the company's DNA. Can you do it, or do I need a new general counsel? A nuclear option. She was threatening Peter, her own lawyer, to get what she wanted. It was high risk, but she knew her team. She had forged them in fire. They would complain, they would warn her, but they would execute. Yes, Zara. I can start the paperwork. Peter's voice was heavy with resignation. It will be a fight. They will sue. Let them, she said. The two words of a tyrant or a revolutionary. I'll see you at the deposition. Send the termination notices. Now. The faint click of a mouse, the whoosh of an email leaving a server. Doing it now, Zara. Mark's voice, small and awed. The emails are sent. The 5 minutes were over. Zara clicked off her phone. The silence in the lounge was total. It was the silence of a new world order. She advanced on the desk. She was no longer a driver, a nuisance, or a problem. She was a force of nature. She was the one who held all the cards. The monstrous declaration by Pendleton was the last gasp of a dying era. The please from Jenkins was the first whimper of the new one. Zara's final turn, the pivot from the old guard to the new, was a piece of theatre so perfect it was almost unconscious. She turned her back on the wreckage of the old management. She walked past the gawking, wealthy passengers. She moved to the back of the room, to the lowest status person she could find, Jessica, the young, terrified concierge. When Zara spoke to her, her voice was completely different. The ice was gone. It was still firm, still the voice of a COO, but it was constructive. It was the voice of a builder, not a destroyer. Congratulations, you're the acting manager. This too was part of the 5 minutes, the execution and the succession, the demolition and the new foundation. She had identified the problem, Pendleton, Jenkins. She had confirmed her authority, the call to Mark. She had confirmed her legal standing, the call to Peter. She had executed the termination, the email. She had installed a new regime, Jessica. It was a corporate blitzkrieg. It was brutal, efficient, and complete. As she watched the two figures walk out into the rain, Zara felt that spike of pure, crystalline adrenaline. It was the feeling she chased. It was better than any drug. It was the feeling of winning, of being right, of justice. She turned to Jessica, who was fumbling with the espresso machine, her hands shaking so badly she could barely lock the portafilter. "Deep breaths, Jessica," Zara said, coming around the counter. "It's just coffee." I know, Mum. It's just, I've never seen anything like that." "Mr. Pendleton, he's been here for ever." "Era's end," Zara said, taking the portafilter from her, expertly tamping the coffee. "They have to make way for new ones. You're in a tough spot. You're going to have a dozen fires to put out by tomorrow. The staff is going to be terrified. The clients are going to be confused. Your job is to be calm. Your job is to lead. Can you do that?" Jessica looked at this woman, this force, who had just casually rearranged her entire life. I think so. Yes. Yes, ma'am, I can." "Good," Zara said, handing her back the portafilter. "Now my espresso, and those layout plans. We've got work to do." Zara turned away, projecting an aura of complete control. But inside, for the first time, a small, cold worm of doubt was burrowing. The triumph was real, but so was the violence of the act. She had enjoyed it. She had enjoyed their fear. And that was a data point she hadn't analyzed yet. The word execution has two meanings. It is the carrying out of a plan. It is also the carrying out of a death sentence. In the 10 minutes following her phone call, Zara Vance had performed both. The execution of the plan was installing Jessica. This was a classic Zara Vance move. Identify underestimated talent, throw them in the deep end, and demand they swim. "Jessica," she said, her voice stabilizing the still-shaking concierge. "First, get a pot of coffee brewing for the rest of the staff. The good stuff, not the sludge they're serving out there. When they come in for their shifts, you will pull them aside one by one, starting with your supervisors. You will tell them what happened. You will use the words, 'terminated for cause,' and 'gross misconduct.' You will not use the word 'racism' yet. That is a legal term, and we will let Peter handle it. You will tell them that Vector Sync is the new owner. I am the CEO, and that their jobs are secure as long as they align with our values of respect and efficiency." Jessica was scribbling on a napkin, her eyes wide. "Respect and efficiency. Got it." "Second," Zara continued, pacing, "I need a full staff roster and the payroll system. I'm approving a 15% hazard pay bonus for everyone working this terminal for the next 48 hours, retroactively. You included. You are cleaning up a mess. You will be compensated for it." 15%? Jessica's head snapped up. "Ms. Vance, that's incredible." "It's not incredible, Jessica. It's just fair. They are about to go through a management vacuum. Don't let them panic. Show them they're valued. Now, where is the systems operations room? The server room? No, the OPS room. The dispatch. The screens. Where do you manage the actual planes?" "Oh, that's Mr. Pendleton's. It was his. It's the gold level office in the back." "Show me." Zara, followed by a trembling Jessica, strode through the lounge. The passengers who had been pretending not to watch now openly stared. The whispers had already begun. "Did you see that? Told him to get out. Heard her on the phone. Void their severance. That's Zara Vance, Vector Sync. She's ruthless. My cousin at Goldman says she eats glass for breakfast." One man, Robert Stanton, a private equity ghoul who made his fortune gutting companies, watched her with a look of professional admiration, his phone still in his hand, the video file quietly uploading to a server. He knew a shark when he saw one, and he knew how to monetize a spectacle. Zara ignored them all. Jessica keyed in a code, and a door behind a paneled wall hissed open. Inside was the nerve center. A wall of screens showed tarmac positions, fueling schedules, and client manifests. It was, Zara noted with disgust, completely archaic. "Is this it?" Zara asked. "This is how you manage a billion-dollar operation? Is that a whiteboard?" "Mr. Pendleton liked to see it all at a glance," Jessica offered weakly. "He liked to feel powerful," Zara muttered. She tapped on a keyboard. The system was proprietary, clunky, and locked. "Admin password." I don't have it," Jessica said, her first failure. "Only Mr. Pendleton and Ms. Jenkins did." Zara sighed. "Of course." She pulled out her phone. "Mark, I'm in the Teterboro ops room. The system is a closed-loop relic. I need a key. Get a Vector Sync tech team on the G650 and get them here. Wheels up in 1 hour. I'm ripping this entire system out tonight." "Tonight, Zara. It's 5 p.m. on the East Coast." "Night is when the planes sleep, Mark. It's the perfect time. Get it done." She hung up. This was the execution of the plan. It was clean, decisive, and forward-moving. But the other execution, the human one, was happening just outside, and it was messy. Arthur Pendleton and Sarah Jenkins were standing in the drenching, cold New Jersey rain. They were in the employee parking lot, a grey, oil-stained expanse of asphalt. They were standing next to their cars. His, a 5-year-old Jaguar XF. Hers, a leased Audi A4. They were in shock. She can't have done that, Sarah said, her voice numb. She tried her phone. My email. It says access denied. My keycard didn't work on the garage door. She did it, Pendleton snarled. The rain was plastering his perfect grey hair to his skull, revealing the pink scalp beneath. He looked defeated, and it made him furious. That bitch! That out-of-nowhere tech brat! You told her to wait outside, Arthur, Sarah suddenly shrieked, the adrenaline finally hitting her, turning her shock to incandescent rage. You pointed at her. Wait outside, you said. You did this. I did what I've done for 30 years, he roared back, his face inches from hers. I protected the integrity of the lounge. How was I supposed to know? She was dressed like trash. High-end trash, maybe, but trash. And I'm supposed to be a mind reader. You were the manager. I was following your lead. Oh, you were following my lead? He mocked. You were the one who puffed up like a little bantam rooster. I'll handle this. Trespassing, you said. You loved it. You loved putting her in her place. Because I thought she was a problem. Because you told me she was a problem. We're done, he spat. We're both done. Sarah began to cry. Not a few tears, but a deep, heaving, ugly sob. My loans, my mortgage, my Audi. Oh God, Arthur, she said. Voided severance. She can't do that, right? That's not legal, is it? Pendleton's rage evaporated, replaced by a cold, sickening dread. He had executive contracts. He had a golden parachute. He was supposed to get a full year's salary. Void the severance, the morals clause. He suddenly remembered the document. Section 4A. He'd glossed over it, assuming it was boilerplate. She's going to fight it, he said, his voice hollow. She's going to drag this out. She's going to ruin us. We have to do something, Sarah insisted, wiping her nose on the sleeve of her $200 suit jacket, which was now ruined. We will, Pendleton said. He looked around the rain-soaked parking lot. He saw a security camera on a pole, its little red light blinking. He knew where every camera on the property was. We call a lawyer, he said, his voice hardening. We're not the problem here. She is. She's unhinged. She's a menace. We were protecting the safety of the clients. That's the story. Safety? Sarah asked, confused. Yes, safety. She bypassed the initial security check-in, didn't she? She walked right in, on her phone, agitated. She refused to identify herself. We were concerned. We were following protocol. A new narrative was forming. A lame, born of desperation. She was aggressive, Sarah said, catching on. I felt threatened. Exactly, Pendleton said. He unlocked his Jaguar. Get in your car, go home. Don't talk to anyone. I'm calling my cousin, Vincent. He's a labor lawyer in Hackensack. This isn't over. This is just the beginning. As he got into his car, his phone buzzed. It was an alert from his bank. Astrolux Holdings has cancelled your corporate Amex. The execution was complete. The consequences were just beginning. The story didn't just leak, it exploded. Robert Stanton, the private equity man, hadn't just sent the video to his friends. He sent it to Aviation Insider, a popular and notoriously catty industry blog. He sent it anonymously, of course, under the guise of a concerned client. By 9 p.m. the blog post was live. The headline was a masterpiece of clickbait. Video. Tech Bro CEO's Teterboro takedown. Racist-busting hero or unhinged tyrant. You decide. The video was brutal. It was edited for maximum drama. It started with Pendleton's dismissive, "You need to wait outside." It then cut to Zara's icy, void their severance, or do I need a new general counsel? It showed Pendleton's rage and Jenkins' tears. It ended with Zara calmly ordering an espresso from the terrified Jessica. The internet, as it is designed to do, tore itself in half. One half was ecstatic. Yas, Queen. This is the I don't dream of labor energy I live for. Put them in their place. That's a black woman in America. She has to be 10 times better and 1 time more ruthless than anyone else. They learned. Serves them right. You don't get to profile your boss and keep your job. This is the definition of FAFO. Fuck around and find out. The other half was horrified. This is disgusting. She's a sociopath. She just destroyed 2 people's lives for a misunderstanding. What a monster. This is the problem with new money tech. No class, no grace. Peter Thiel would have handled that with a quiet email. Congrats on your power trip. You just tanked the morale of your entire new company, alienated your high-value clients, and showed everyone you're an unstable liability. Firing is an HR process, not a public execution. The name Zara Vance was the #1 trending topic on Twitter for 12 straight hours. At 10 p.m., Zara's phone rang. It was Mr. Davenport, the lead director on her board. He was old money, old oil, and he was the one who had steadied the ship during her chaotic, brilliant Series C funding round. Zara, he said. His voice was not warm. I'm looking at a video. It appears to be you, at an airport, publicly executing 2 employees. Tell me this is some kind of deep fake. It's real, Charles, Zara said. She was in the new ops room, a half-eaten protein bar in her hand, surrounded by her newly flown-in tech team, who were already tearing down the old servers. They profiled me. They were racist, classist, and incompetent. I removed the liability. You became the liability, Zara. Davenport's voice rose. We have DoD contracts. We have shareholder meetings. We cannot have our CEO, the public face of our multi-billion-dollar company, behaving like a Roman emperor in the gladiator's ring. What in God's name were you thinking? I was thinking they insulted the CEO, she said. They didn't know you were the CEO. That's the entire point. It was a mistake. A correctable one. You just set fire to $20 million in potential wrongful termination lawsuits. Void their severance? Did you really say that out loud in public? I'm handling it, Charles, she said, her patience gone. No, you're not. You're admiring the fire you just started. The stock is going to hemorrhage in pre-market tomorrow. You need to get ahead of this. You need to issue an apology. Zara went still. Apologize? For what? For being successful? For being disrespected? You apologize for the method, Zara. For the lack of professionalism. For the public spectacle. You promoted a concierge to general manager. It's madness. It's not a movie. It's done, Charles. I stand by my decision. The new team is already finding efficiencies. There was a long, cold silence on the line. You'd better be right, Zara. You'd better be 100% right. Because you just spent all of your political capital, all of it. The next time you need the board's backing, you remember this call. He hung up. The fallout wasn't just in the boardroom, it was on the ground. At 7 a.m. the next morning, Teterboro was in chaos. Jessica, the new acting manager, hadn't slept. She was running on caffeine and pure terror. The morning shift staff had seen the video. They were terrified of her and terrified of the new, unseen CEO. Then the client started arriving. Robert Stanton, the man who filmed the video, was the first. He walked in, smirking, and went straight to Jessica. So, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. You're in charge now, are you? Wonderful. Well, in charge, Jessica. The coffee is burnt, there are no Wall Street journals, and my usual tail-fin catering order for my 8 a.m. to Palm Beach is wrong. It's tuna salad. Tuna, I'm allergic. Arthur would have never let this happen. I'm so sorry, Mr. Stanton, Jessica stammered. The transition, you're failing, he said, not unkindly, but with a finality. This respect and efficiency. This isn't it. He turned to the other clients. Arthur Pendleton may have been a snob, but he was a competent snob. This place has gone to hell in less than 12 hours. By noon, 3 high-net-worth flight share program contracts, worth a combined $50 million a year, had lodged formal complaints and were reviewing their options. The exclusive feel was gone, replaced by a sense of chaos and fear. Meanwhile, another shark was circling. Marcus Thorne, CEO of Apex Global Logistics, Zara's #1 rival. He'd been trying to buy Astrolux for months, but Zara had outbid him. He watched the video with undisguised glee. He didn't post on Twitter. He made 2 quiet phone calls. One was to a reporter at the Wall Street Journal, feeding him a juicy and mostly untrue story about Zara's erratic behavior and instability during the Astrolux bidding war. The second call was to Charles Davenport. "Charles, my friend," Marcus purred. "Just calling to check in. Saw the fireworks at Teterboro. Quite a show. Listen, I just want you to know. If this vector sync thing becomes too volatile, well, Apex is always ready to talk about a merger. To stabilize the market, you know." It was a blatant, hostile threat. Marcus was signaling his intent. He was going to use Zara's instability as a lever to attempt a takeover. The fallout was complete. Zara had won her 5-minute battle, but she had just plunged her entire company into a full-scale war. Karma, Zara Vance had always believed, was a data-driven system. You put good inputs in, you got good outputs. You put bad inputs in, like bigotry and incompetence, you got fired. It was simple. But real-life karma is not a clean algorithm. It's a messy, chaotic, and often brutal boomerang. The first piece of karma hit 2 months later in a sterile deposition room in Hackensack, New Jersey. The lawsuit, Pendleton and Jenkins versus VectorSync Logistics, was in full swing. Zara's lawyer, Peter, had been right. It was a fight. Pendleton and Jenkins' lawyer, Vincent, was a sharp, street-fighting brawler who had zero interest in corporate values. "Ms. Vance," Vincent said, "you state my clients were fired for gross misconduct because, and I quote, they failed to recognize you. Is that correct?" "They were fired because they were discriminatory," Zara said, her voice flat. "Discriminatory. I see. And you deduced this in, was it 5 minutes? 4? It was obvious. What was obvious, Miss Vance, is that you, a private citizen at the time, the deal had not been communicated to the staff, bypassed a secure check-in station, refused to identify yourself, and became, as my clients will testify, agitated and hostile. Is that not true? I was not hostile. I was firm. You were firm. Got it." He smiled, a thin, unpleasant expression. "And then, in a fit of pique, you fired them. You, who had been their boss for all of 5 minutes. And you tried to void their severance. You tried to take their pensions. You tried to ruin them, not just fire them. Is that firm, Ms. Vance, or is that vindictive?" "Objection," Peter said, bored. "Counsel is characterizing." "I'll rephrase," Vincent said, his eyes gleaming. "Are you in the habit of publicly executing employees you've just met?" It was a disaster. But the kill shot wasn't from the lawyer. It was from the witness. They called Robert Stanton. He walked in, looking like the picture of old money respectability. Mr. Stanton?" Vincent asked. "You were there. You're a gold-level Astrolux member. Have been for 15 years. "Longer," Stanton said, his voice a smooth, confident hum. "I knew Arthur Pendleton well. He was the soul of discretion, a true professional." "And on the day in question, what did you observe?" Stanton leaned forward. "I observed a very unstable situation. A woman dressed in, shall we say, casual attire, was bypassing the desk. She was agitated. Mr. Pendleton and Ms. Jenkins, in my view, were simply trying to de-escalate. They were following security protocols." "Did you hear them say anything discriminatory?" "Heavens, no," Stanton scoffed. "Arthur was just trying to maintain order. This is a lounge for high-profile individuals, you know. We value privacy and security. This woman, Ms. Vance, she was the one who was loud. She was the one who was threatening. I felt unsafe. I was glad Arthur was there to handle it. His firing was well, it's why I've moved my contract to NetJets. It was a lie, a complete, self-serving, class-based lie. But it was his word, a 15-year client against hers. The judge issued a summary judgment. Not only was the morals clause thrown out, but the judge ruled that Zara's actions were capricious, unprofessional, and undertaken with extreme prejudice. VectorSync was ordered to pay Pendleton and Jenkins their full severance, plus 2 years' salary in punitive damages and all legal fees. It was a multi-million-dollar loss and a public humiliation. But their karma was a poisoned chalice. They got the money, a combined $3.4 million, but they were now toxic. The Aviation Insider video, combined with the lawsuit, had made them famous in the worst way. No high-end FBO would touch them. Pendleton was a security risk for getting fired by a new owner, and Jenkins was that woman who cries from the video. Pendleton was forced into early retirement, spending his days in his oversized New Jersey home, bitterly watching the stock market and writing angry letters to the Wall Street Journal. Sarah Jenkins, unable to get another executive job, took her money and opened a high-end dog grooming boutique in suburban Connecticut. She was miserable. They were rich, but their careers, their identities, were over. The stock did hemorrhage. The lawsuit, combined with the loss of the Teterboro contracts, Stanton and his friends had all pulled out, citing the chaos, sent VectorSync's share price tumbling 18%. Marcus Thorne, who had been quietly buying up stock in the dip, now had a significant position. He allied himself with Charles Davenport and the other old guard board members. They called an emergency board meeting. "Zara," Davenport said, his face grim on the giant screen. "The Teterboro incident was a disgrace. The lawsuit was a humiliation. And now, Q4 projections show the Astrolux division is going to post a $40 million loss. You took a profitable asset, and in 6 months, you have burned it to the ground." "It's a turnaround," Zara argued. "I'm implementing the VectorSync AI. The efficiencies—" "There are no efficiencies." Marcus Thorne's face popped up, his voice smooth and predatory. "You're bleeding, and your instability is threatening the core logistics business. Zara, we love your vision, but you're a founder, not an operator. It's time for adult supervision." The vote was 6-1. Zara, of course, was the one. They were removing her as CEO of VectorSync. She would be kicked upstairs to a chief visionary officer role with no power. The new CEO, pending a search, would be Marcus Thorne, a merger of equals to stabilize the company. Zara looked at the faces on the screen, the men she had made rich, the men she had trusted, all of them, turning on her. "You're firing me," she said. It wasn't a question. "We're transitioning you, Zara," Davenport said, unable to meet her eye. It's what's best for the company. She had fired 2 people with brutal, summary, public justice. Now she was being fired with cold, quiet, corporate backstabbing. She was told to wait outside the future of her own company. She signed the papers, she took her buyout, and she walked away from the company she had built from nothing. The karmic circle was complete. The bigots had been paid, the rival had won, and the hero had been exiled. The real world, it seemed, had no time for her kind of justice. For 6 months, Zara Vance disappeared, processing her failure. She realized she was right to fire Pendleton and Jenkins, but disastrously wrong in how she did it. Her ego and anger had turned a just decision into a public execution, giving her enemies the power to oust her. While she was gone, Marcus Thorne took over VectorSync and killed its innovation, while Jessica, the concierge, used the experience to land a senior job elsewhere. Zara's hard karma was losing her company, but she had secretly saved one asset, a powerful AI patent called Project Nexus. In an Austin warehouse, she pitched Nexus to new, hungry investors. She was no longer in a sweatsuit, but in jeans, her purpose clear. The Teterboro incident was my most valuable lesson, she told them. I was right about the problem, but wrong about the solution. I let them make it about me. She had lost her empire, but gained the wisdom to build a new one. This time, not on a foundation of anger, but on cold, hard, unassailable data. So, what do you think? Was Zara Vance a hero who finally delivered a clapback, or did her own ego become her biggest liability? The line between justice and vengeance is almost always blurry, and as this story shows, in the real world, karma rarely picks a simple target. That one 5-minute decision set off a chain reaction that cost everyone something. What would you have done in her position? Would you have taken the high road, or would you have burned it all down too? Let me know your honest opinion in the comments below. If you loved this story of complex consequences, boardroom drama, and real-world karma, it would mean the world to me if you did 3 things. Hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to see it, and most importantly, click that subscribe button and ring the bell. We drop stories like this every week, and you won't want to miss the one we're working on next. Thanks for watching.